Welcome back to the morning show here on Tobago Updates Television. I am Adanna Combie, and we begin conversations this morning in studio. We speak with Mr. Ashworth Jack, and he is a former assemblyman and a minority leader. We're still talking about budget 2025 as we work through the paces of the budget, especially the allocation to Tobago. And so we're going to have the conversation this morning. Mr. Jack, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Mrs. Combie. Good morning, Tobago, and everyone viewing us on the World Wide Web. Thank you for having me this morning.
Of course, it's an absolute pleasure. So as you know, we just came out of Budget 2025. It was read in the Parliament on the 30th of September, which was last Monday, right? And so we're here now. We have the allocation for Tobago. Specifically, that's what we're going to be focusing on. We know what is allowed for Tobago legally, that 4.03% up to 6.9%, I believe, of the national budget is what is legally allowed for the Tobago space. Traditionally, we have seen where Tobago usually gets the lower end. We always stay in the 4-point-something% area, right? This year getting 4.3%, a total of 2.599. The question now that has been circulating in the atmosphere is it enough? We're hearing that Tobago always gets the short end of the stick. We don't get enough to do what we have to do here on the island, and now we are in a position where we have to manage what we have, which is what happens usually in any general situation. So we want to go through the paces now. You having had the experience of being a part of the assembly and knowing about budgets and stuff like that. What is your approach in terms of where we are now when we present the budget? What our expectations are, and how do we manage what we currently have?
It's going to be. I wanted to say a couple of things. One, we have grown accustomed. There's a comfort zone that people get locked into that we need to look at. And I know that there's a focus every year. There's a focus on a number. We got 4.03, we got this, we got that. And there are always going to be for and against. And what is interesting is that there are persons who will say one thing today, and a couple of years after, you wonder if it's the same person or if an alien took over their body. And they say something totally different. And well, let me look into the 4.03 first, and then we move on a bit. The issue of Tobago's allocation, as I hope every Tobagonian is aware of by now, came to the fore in Act number 40 of 1996. When Mr. Robinson was Minister Extraordinary, Mr. Charles was Chief Secretary, we knew prior to that, I was in that assembly, prior to that we knew that there was always a problem with inadequate funding for Tobago. Prior to 2000, thereabout, 1999, 2000, I think it came out in October 2000, the Dispute Resolution Commission ruling. It was taken by Mr. Charles to the Dispute Resolution Commission in 97, 98, but the ruling only was given in 2000. Tobago's allocation to the budget was 2%. Between 1.8 and 2% of the national budget. So Tobago have been traditionally underfunded. And one would have expected, because of that traditional underfunding, in order to fix that kind of situation, that you was going to have an overcompensation kind of situation. Of course, that did not happen. When the Dispute Resolution Commission did meet and they gave the ruling, they found what is considered a solution to that time, which is look at the population size, and they said, okay, at that time the population size was 4.03% of the national population, and that is how the 4.03 came about. A lot of people don't know that, and but if you look at the Tobago House of Assembly Act, it also speaks to something else. It says, in considering the estimates, that the government must take into consideration a number of things. The traditional underfunding in Tobago, the lack of multiplier effect of spending in Trinidad, the lack of opportunities for Tobagonians in sports and economics, and a number of other things. So I don't think that there was ever an expectation that there will be a locking at the fore at the 4%. It was a starting point. But let us say, for argument's sake, that you want to look into the population size. My information is that the Tobago population is now 5.8% of the national population. So if you want to look into population size, which is what have happened with the 4.03, what Tobago should be receiving now
is in the
5.8 range.
And this is exactly what the secretary, when we had a conversation right here on set, the Secretary of Finance, she was saying that is the expectation of the 5.8%.
Because you're saying to us in Tobago, I am going to give you based on your population size, based on the historical antecedent. And so when you decide that I'm going to stay at 4.03 or 4.3%, you are admitting that you are underfunding Tobago by your own admission as to why you have
the
the
consideration
4.3.
isn't given to the entire population of the island.
Because that is what you locked into, because it was in your best interest to give us 4%. Because they say, okay, it's the population size, but if the population has grown by 2%. So you understand, Tobago is actually underfunded to the tune of $1 billion a year. Because it's almost a 50% increase in population size, but there have not been an increase in the funding to take care of the population. That the Dispute Resolution Commission did that and said, okay, this is the mean, and that is why the range was set 4.03 to 6.9, because it would have anticipated growth in population and stuff like that. But the successive governments have kept it let me lock you into 4.03.
And this was done, you said, in 2000.
Yes.
Right, in 2000. So if the population, the assessment was, or the projections was, the population will increase, is it now that another assessment has to be done?
Not necessarily, because there's a range.
Okay.
There's the 4.03 to 6.9.
Okay. And when we get to 6.9 of the population?
No, when we come into that, we come into that. And so you see, because you see, the Dispute Resolution Commission could be triggered at any time. But I want to go past, I'm using the present day situation, the present day underfunding, and how easy it could have been solved. But that is not all. Historically, there have been an attempt to keep Tobago in its place. And I know you made a comment earlier, so I just want to show you a couple of things, because I'd like to back up my acquisitions with facts. Some of the things that we looked at in terms of additional funding for Tobago, the growth of Tobago economy, had to do with how you fix tourism. And I know somebody's going to tell me, oh, we built a new airport. And I am the first person to congratulate the framers of that. But if you look at the budget in 2025, the 24-25 budget, an airport that's supposed to be opened within the next couple of months, there is not any provision for a mass rollout in terms of advertising Tobago outside of Trinidad and Tobago to bring passengers into an airport that there's a boast that will hold, could turn around 3 million passengers per year. So yes, we're building the massive airport, but the budget does not reflect any planning, because you have to start to advertise Tobago and its ability to take all these additional persons right now. But if you go back to 2012, and when there was an attempt or a decision to open the airport until 2 a.m., that was championed by me, and then get killed for it. And let me just show you something. This is January 2012, the 27th of January 2012. Airbridge to begin 24-hour operation next month, February. This is the minister, then Minister Devant Muraj. February 10th, 2012. 24-hour airport, not a good idea. You know who said this? The Minister in charge acceded to our request to have a 24-hour airport. The then Secretary for Tourism, the Tobago House of Assembly, Mr. Neil Wilson, came out and said, no, I don't like the idea of the airport being open that long. And if you go to the budget of 2013, the 2012-2013, the 2013-2014 budget, the part of the achievement of the Assembly in that year was that there was an increase in persons traveling between the Isles of Trinidad and Tobago. And they had the audacity to go back in that same document and write that the 24-hour airport played a major part in the number of tourists that came in the period. Now, you said it wasn't a good idea. But I mean, see, a wise man seldom changes his mind. A fool never does. So it has proven that there's some wisdom that came out of it. They saw the benefit of it. But did they? Because as soon as there was an opportunity, we went from a 10 o'clock closing in the past to a 2 to 3 o'clock closing in that period, 2013 to 2019, 2020, around COVID. And then COVID was the opportunity or the excuse given to shut the airport early. And
Which is still a challenge until up till now.
COVID is finished 2 years. The airport is closing 8:30. The last flight is leaving 8:30. Now, how do you grow your tourist
And that was
sector?
my next question, because now that we're saying we're having this airport, as we're on the topic of the airport, of course, to attract more persons to come to Tobago, was there any facility for the development of tourism on the island of Tobago? From a marketing standpoint, from a product standpoint, the development of the tourism product on the island of Tobago and marketing it.
Well, I'm coming to all that, because the marketing also depends on the budget. Because you have a 42 million budget, I think it's a cut in total budget from the last year. So, the last couple of years, you have a cut in your marketing budget. But yet you're building a spanking $1 billion airport. So, what are you going to do with the additional space? And so when I look at that, I say, you know, this is crazy. Then I'm going to go to another thing. In 2004, I think either 2004, 2005, I didn't have enough time to go through my library to put it. I would have proposed the issue of Carnival. I took a motion to the Assembly speaking about us moving the Tobago Carnival from the same time with Trinidad and create a Carnival in Tobago at a separate time of the year. I gave the economic reasons. I gave a number, and part of it was that, hey, there are a number of people in Trinidad who play Carnival all over the world, and they will come to Tobago in droves. I spoke about the persons who, because of their faith, don't take part in Carnival. So if there's Carnival at separate times, instead of trying to look for foreign exchange, which of course now you can't get, to go somewhere else in the Caribbean, you can come to Tobago when there's Trinidad Carnival. And then, of course, when there's time for the Tobago Carnival, then the mass players, which are extremely large numbers, will come to Tobago. So Tobago economy will have a boost, even from the Carnival in Trinidad and then from Tobago. Man, I was castigated for that. They wanted to kill me. And again, it was raised in 2011, 2012. I then raised it with Winston Peters, who was then Minister of Tourism. Tobago News, 2nd of March 2025. No to a second Carnival in Tobago. This is the former Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly. So every time that there's an idea as to how we can grow the Tobago economy separate from Trinidad, they're just shut down. And if you think that is bad, everybody speaks about the Study Park Quarry and the potential of the Study Park Quarry for export and all that. We have been trying to purchase some new plants, because the plant, one is 40 years old, one is about 20-something years old. And the cost of maintaining those plants will cost you more than what you will pay in terms of or mortgage for the plant. But guess what? Let me finish this up. But guess what? On the 7th of April, the blasting license expires. Yesterday, the month, we're still waiting for our blasting license. So how did Tobago grow? How did Tobago make its own money to help to subsidize Tobago's development? If every time there's an idea to how Tobago can become self-sufficient, the permission have to come from Trinidad, from people who probably don't even know what Tobago looks like, except just see it on television.
I like that you introduced that, and we're gonna come back with that part of the conversation, ladies and gentlemen. We're speaking with Mr. Ashworth Jack, former assemblyman and minority leader. We're gonna go for a short break, and when we come back, we're gonna continue conversations about budget 2025 and how Tobago can sustain itself with what we have allocated to us. As we go for a break, of course, we invite you to help us share the live, share the live, share the live. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the morning show here on Tobago Updates Television, and thank you so much for staying with us. We're speaking with Mr. Ashworth Jack this morning, former assemblyman and minority leader, as we continue conversations about budget 2025. And we started talking about, some of the projections or the ideas that you presented in your time, and some of the elements that will contribute to a budget dispensation here on the island of Tobago. And we started heading into the direction of how does Tobago fund itself? How does Tobago subsidize the funding that is allocated from the budget? And how do we make decisions? And one word kind of comes to mind. And I'm going to introduce that topic now as we continue this. I'm thinking autonomy.
Yeah. I don't think that there's no other direction that Tobago can go, because as we started speaking about the license and permits and stuff like that, if someone who don't understand your plight have to give you food,
makes decisions for you.
Well, it's the same thing.
Right.
They're giving you food and saying that this is enough food for you. I don't think you need this today. And that is what is happening in Tobago. Tobago, every time there's a permit, there's a license. Those licenses and permits have to come from some agency, some ministry in Trinidad. And of course, when you see what is happening now, where there are 2 elections within the next year or year and something, there's a jockey and say that I don't give you anything so that you look bad. It has nothing to do with the island's development. And this is not new. I am seeing this fight as different. It's a Tobago fight, but Tobago people need to understand that this transcends your organization. But unfortunately, but true, that have not happened. I can go way back to 1977 when there's an organization in Tobago that still exists that says Tobago don't need internal self-government, right? And fought it in 2012. It is that Tobago don't need all that power. There was an introduction of 8 to 10% of the national budget in 2012. I remember the then Secretary for Finance said, okay, you said we're going to give you 8% if we have this autonomy. Give us the 8% now. We need the 8% because the development money is not enough. And I have heard him on this station a couple of days ago saying, no, Tobago get enough money. The same person. So they're talking from both sides of the mouth. And that is not, this has to transcend the organization and the individual. We have to look at the bigger picture. We have to look at the island of Tobago. Because democracy is as such that today you're in power, tomorrow you're out. Today you're into. When you come back, what are you going to say? Or if you come back, God forbid, what are you going to say?
No, the thing about it is, you're right. You're in today, out tomorrow, you never can tell. And the decisions made in Tobago are supposed to be for the benefit of all of us who reside here, and all of us who have interest here on the island of Tobago. The conversation of autonomy can only be carried by those who have the authority to carry it.
Of course.
But is it the population of Tobago can apply that type of pressure?
Okay, I was just going to come to that. I think we seem to be thinking along the same lines. This morning, I was thinking, where do I want to go with this interview? And the first thing that came to my mind, and I have it written here, was freedom and funding. Anybody who control your funding, control your freedom. And anybody who control your freedom, control your funding. So they're interrelated. They can't be separated. The freedom to make decisions is what will determine if the oil and gas in Tobago's water could be monetized by the people of Tobago, or somebody in Port of Spain makes that decision. The funding to take you to international court is going to determine if I could fight you or not, because you ain't going to give me money to fight you.
Correct.
So it's a kind of oxymoron when you think about it, right? And then you have another situation where an administration came in. The borrowing was maximized. So they have a debt to pay. And then you have about $1 billion in debt for contractors, separate to the borrowing. So you have about $1.3 billion in debt that you have to pay. But yet your development budget is between 300 million and 250 this year. If you had paid every cent of your development money just to pay your bills, you would still be in debt.
And you have
Tobago
no
would have
project.
had absolutely
no
no
development
projects.
projects.
Right? So, and ironically, the people who made the debts are the same people who say, well, we get enough money now. You spent $1 billion in a year and something on projects, on development projects. And then you're coming to say 250 million is more than enough. Increase in prices, a number of stuff where you have a reduction in your allocation and say, hey, there's enough for you. What do I want to do? You know? So it's a kind of, people need to take themselves sometimes out of the equation and look at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture here is called Tobago. And what saddens me about this is that this fight has been going on from Jamie Biggart, APT James, A.N.R. Robinson, Hochoy Charles, Jeff Davidson. It's coming all the way down, and we are in not much a better position. Let me just throw two other things into the mix. Anybody who remember when the A.N.R. Robinson International Airport was under construction? It was during the time of 86 to 91. And the Scarborough Port, Deepwater Harbor, the extension into a Deepwater Harbor. The same organization was telling you, you're wasting money, it's a duck pond. Then they went and said, Robinson spending all Trinidad money in Tobago to build the airport. So every time there's an attempt to bring Tobago up to a place that it can compete with the rest of the Caribbean, we are told that the project is a waste of time, a waste of money. And the thing is, how do we as Tobagonians live with ourselves?
You know, I want to go back a little bit on the topic of autonomy, because I think autonomy is very important for the Tobago space, for us to be able to make the types of decisions that will cause Tobago to move forward, to progress. And, you know, I introduced the notion, the people who have the power to carry the conversation, do they have the type of pressure from the population to say, hey, this is that conversation that we must have steadfastly every day, every opportunity you get, pressure the people who are going to sit with you for us to get to the point where we can have our autonomy. Is the Tobago population actively engaged? Do they understand what autonomy would mean for us here on the island of Tobago? And do they understand that they have a voice in terms of saying, yes, we want our autonomy and this is what we want? Have they been involved in the conversation, consultations as we like to say? Have they been involved in the conversation and be made aware of what is at stake here? Should we never get our autonomy, we're always going to be in this position. So is it that we need to have the public education, get the involvement of the 60,000 of us who reside here, even the children and all, get them involved, have an understanding, educate them. This is what is at stake if we don't get our autonomy. So let's ride hard and make sure we get it.
You know what? I'm smiling. I'm smiling because of how right you are about the involvement of the population. The population seems to be too disengaged. And that is in part because the population doesn't have a full understanding. You speak to people and people are locked into their political ideologies. There's a DNA that people don't want to get to break out of at all. And you're talking about involving the children. And you're so right. Because we always think that children don't have a great enough appreciation for what is taking place. And that is not true. My own experience, that I got involved in politics at 11 years old. And I was attracted to the idea of internal self-government. I was going to Scarborough Boys Anglican. When you coming down Robinson and Murray and Sidmond Murray and Hochoi Charles and the whole works, were there in those James Park and what you all now call a public bank car park, which was then called Uptown Car Park, because it's really a public car park. There was meetings there so often in the evenings, speaking about Tobago's autonomy and what the importance of internal, well, it was then called internal self-government and all that. So young people were more involved. I think we are less involved now than we were 40 years ago.
I totally agree with that, and I feel that there are so many other distractions taking place
Exactly.
that is not allowing us to focus on the things. Is really holding us, can I say, hostage, because we have to move forward from where we are. Because I tell you what, a budget will be read next year,
Same
and
argument.
the conversation would be the same.
Same
Until something changes drastically and dramatically, the conversation will remain the same. And I tell you what, every single administration, when they receive the budget, we don't have enough.
Same thing.
And when they are not in the administration, what you have is enough. It's the same conversation that we're going to keep having over and over and over. And to me, that is the remedy for insanity, because we keep doing the same thing. So let us now change the conversation.
Expecting different results.
Let us now change the conversation, right? If you had the position, the authority to make decisions, you are the one receiving the budget for THA, right? You have this amount of money. These are the projects. Of course, we went through having to prioritize what you're supposed to, what you want to get done first. We know we have to do that. In fact, the Secretary of Tourism was here and she said, we will manage. You understand?
No, and that's a problem. I have a problem with that. I have a problem with people saying to the world, I don't have enough money, but I go manage. Manage how? Manage with what? If you have to advertise...
The same process, I believe, but okay.
No, if you have to... And we become too comfortable, we accept. Well, what I going to do? Is that throw up your hand in the air kind of thing? What I going to do? We going to manage. We would not manage. We have not been managing. We have not been able to grow Tobago economy because there have not been enough effort and money to grow the economy. We are not managing.
So where do we go from here?
Exactly. And so there has to be a whole education program. And it has to be different. A number of the persons who will never have these conversations are young guys and things sitting on the side of the road.
And how do you
How do
you make this conversation
meet them?
Appealing to them?
And you have to meet them where they are. You can't go in jacket and tie. You can't go in. You have to go. If you have to sit down on the pavement with them, you have to sit down on the block. You have to. If some of them will walk away. There's no two ways about that. But the leaders of them, you have to first find who those leaders are. Let me tell you this. A lot of people think that the people you elect are the real leaders of this society. They're not. The real leaders of society sits sometimes, it's a little boy sitting on the, who, when he say, fellas, we are listening to nobody, everybody gets up and walk. You have to be able to meet them. And when you can meet them and you start to converse with them and let them see the benefit of this to themselves, to their children, then you find they sharing some of the things with some of the guys, and they're going to listen to them more than they're going to listen to you. And then when you have them, then they will tell you first, hey, you have a meeting, let me go to the meeting. But in the meantime, there's a question that must be asked. There are a number of persons either in or vying for office and stuff. Do they understand what autonomy means?
And that's the question. That is the question.
A major concern. Because what happens is that you see people and you hear them saying something today and then they say something tomorrow and you say, well, they cannot understand autonomy. They understand that, hey, this is my time. Or I want to get in. And then when you do that, what do? How does Tobago benefit? Tobago is marking time. We have 3.4 trillion cubic meters of gas outside of Tobago. It is now referred to as 47 miles northeast of Trinidad. And everybody sits down.
And I think the fact we don't have the facts and the education and the knowledge to know what we're sitting on.
Right.
We're sitting on here on the island of Tobago. We have to go for a short break. And we're going to come back with conversations with Mr. Ashworth Jack, former minority leader and assemblyman here in the Tobago House of Assembly, as we continue talking about Budget 2025 and the position of Tobago as it relates to autonomy and the gold mine that we are sitting on here on the island of Tobago. As we go for a break, we invite you to help us. Share the live. Share the live. Share the live. We'll be right back.
When you're moving from place to place. Good morning, good morning, morning, good morning, morning.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Tobago Updates Television. We're just about 7:52 a.m. So if you get into work for 8 o'clock, you should already be pulling up at your office and heading upstairs to your desk. If you're not and you're still on our nation's roads, remember to drive safely, get the children off to school in good, safe condition. We continue conversations this morning, speak with Mr. Ashworth Jack, a former assemblyman and minority leader. We were talking about Budget 2025. We touched a little bit on autonomy. And now we want to talk about the gold mine that Tobago is that we're sitting on right now. So let's get into the assets of Tobago and how we can monetize these assets so that we don't have to be so heavily dependent, or rather, when the budget comes in and we're not satisfied with the figures, we have a means of subsidizing so that we can embark on the projects that we need to here on the island of Tobago.
No, but you see, there's another problem with that, right? There's another problem. There are two things that we can do to deal with that. The issue of having companies that is separated apart from the THA is commendable. I will commend both administrations for that. Commendable. But when you have a situation where all your license and all that have to be gotten outside, they can determine A and not making you make no money, which is what is happening now. You want to borrow money, you have to show that you could pay it back. If you can't get a license, how are you paying it back? So Tobago is in a position where autonomy is the key to its development, right? And if that is not done, then Tobago will have to take to the street. Tobago will have to understand this is what we are being denied, and we take to the street. And then Tobago have to be able to look at the size of Tobago, because for most of you who don't know, the majority of people think Trinidad is bigger than Tobago. Trinidad is not bigger than Tobago. Tobago is much larger than Trinidad. And for students who watching me and saying, Mr. Jack, crazy, 1864 compared to 116, let me explain. Countries are no longer determined by the size of their land space. Countries are determined by the time of their exclusive economic zone, which is the amount of water around them that they can claim, that they can monetize. Trinidad, what, 7 or 8 miles from Venezuela, at about 30-something miles from Tobago, 70-something miles from Grenada. And that's it. Tobago are the same equidistance from Trinidad. The next neighbor is Barbados, which is about 80-something miles. And other than that, we go out to the African Ocean. So we have the exclusive economic zone of 200 miles, which is allotted by international law. International law of the sea gives you once you're not bound by anybody else. So a lot of the fishing, a lot of the stuff is done in what will be Tobago waters if we will separate islands. I always say this, and for persons who live in the east of Tobago, they can bear us out, and people who travel to and from the east of Tobago in the night. If you're coming, as you pass Hope going up the road, by the time you meet monks in George Study Park area, if you look up to the east, you will see the flare burning from the oil tankers, right? Trinidad is down to the west. When Mr. Robinson was talking about the oil being in Tobago waters, we were told that we're crazy. But even from a sight, you realize up this way is the flare burning, down that way is where Trinidad is, but yet it's off Trinidad. No reference is ever made of Tobago. And then you have on total other side of the island, which are only Castara Partivia area, where the new oil gas finds are, which is estimated as of now to be 3.4 trillion with a T cubic meters of gas. And my thing is this, okay, Tobago have any say. They're going to run some pipelines under the sea. They're going to take all the natural gas back to Trinidad. And they're going to do whatever they need to do in terms of refining or freezing or whatever they do. And it's going to be considered part of the Trinidad economy. How many Tobagonians are going to be employed as a result of that? What are the jobs that are needed for that platform right now? Is there any training taking place in Tobago to be able to take some of those jobs? The rigs out there, where are the provisions, water and groceries and all that, for that going to be bought? Is it why they're building a port in Toko? So all those things are going to impact on the Tobago economy. And to tell me that Tobago will continue to get 4.03% of their own money is another story altogether. And so the question, my argument will continue to be, Tobagonians have to get up and say, hey, enough is enough, regardless of your persuasion.
But they can't get up and say enough is enough if they don't have the education. Without the information.
Back there. Leadership. You have to educate your people. Everybody will not take it, Regardless of what you do, there are some people that are stuck in their ways.
There's a songwriter who said, education, education, this is the foundation of a rising population. And so we need to have the information so that the people
conversation have to be had all the time at every level. In the youth groups, in the churches, and instead of people thinking that a gathering of a church is only to speak about Jesus, a hungry people can't praise. You have to understand that you have to tell your people, this is what is available. This is how we, and I think it's the Bible tells me that God will like fools, You know me say that?
We have to actively engage in these types of conversations. I totally agree, so that we know what our rights are. We know what we have accessible to us and what we're being denied, so that we can fight actively for...
If you don't know what you have, anything is enough. And that's what you're seeing here. People, imagine Tobagonians standing up in Tobago and say, hey, I don't need no more. That's enough. And I am like, whoa, really? And nobody have sat down and said, okay, what do we bring to the table? And if you know what you have, and you say, hey, I am not going to settle for this. And you could then go and tell your population, this is what we have, this is what they're giving us. And then you could have the population make a decision as to how they want to support. But we are color bound. We just, who's red, who's yellow, who black, who green.
So now we're at a place where we have to lobby for information. Let's have the discussions. Let's talk openly in open space. Let's teach the people. Let's educate the people as to what is available. And let's go after it, because, as I said, we will continue having this conversation. Next year for the next budget, we'll be asking how much is enough. Do you have enough? How are you going to manage? If we don't change the conversation...
And we will continue to say, well, we got to make do with what we have. No. How? When you make do with what you have, who suffers?
That's right. That's absolutely right.
Because somebody is going to suffer. When you look at some of the allocations, I mean, are you get locked into allocation because it's not enough? It will never.
Will it ever be enough?
No, never. But the issue is, for me, enough means how do we look at the historical underdevelopment of Tobago and bring it up to par? We have a $10 million allocation, I think, for road paving in Tobago. Yet in the budget, they said that there was a 150 last year in Trinidad, and they've spent 100, so the next 50 is going to be spent, and they're going to spend another 100. So this year you expect 150. There's a travel allowance in the office of the Prime Minister for 49 million. There's an increase of $50 million in entertainment allowance in the office of the Prime Minister. That together, the travel allowance and the increase in entertainment allowance is what? 40% of Tobago development budget.
So what we have to do is change the conversation and let Tobago start talking about how can we use what we have to make
and demand we get what is right for the hours, even if it means that we have to walk the pavement every day and saying, listen, we're not asking you for this. This is what belongs to us. We need to do this. We need to get this. We want to blast rock in our island, and you tell me somebody in charge said no. Or they look at the bill and say the THA Act says that every business operating in Tobago must pay the taxes in Tobago. That does not happen. The banks, TSTT, you name them, even any business that have a headquarters in Trinidad, pay the taxes in Trinidad, the VAT, the everything. And then they turn and tell you, but Tobago don't make much money. How can it? 90% of the cars in Tobago, in Tobago, bought in Tobago, are bought from a company's headquarters in Trinidad. So all the taxes on your cars are paid in Trinidad. It doesn't reflect in the Tobago situation. So you don't even know what you bring to the table. You're bringing things from customs. You're a client in Port of Spain. And even if you're a client in Tobago, that's another situation. It's, we need to see things differently.
We absolutely have to, and we have to change the conversation, of course, if we want to get Tobago to where we want it to be. Thank you so much for coming on this morning, Mr. Jack, and having the conversation with us. And we do hope we could continue having the important conversations that are going to bring changes here on the island of Tobago to impact my life, your life, and the lives of your children and generations to come. This is where we have to end the morning show on Tobago Updates Television, but it's not where we end our programming. We head on over to GMT. So as you head on over, we invite you to help us share the life. Share the life, share the life.